time. I'll do the best I can, but these chase conditions are just not ideal. I'm gonna try to get as a lot better footage and to load up on my YouTube when this is all done and over with. Once I get past the videos for the other 4 hurricanes I chased this year, but we'll do the best we can with what I got, and let's see what Helene has to offer us here. So I'm gonna put you guys on the dash, have you facing out, and you can watch things as they unfold. I'm guessing that the eyewall should be here in probably in another hour or two. It's hard to tell. I'm doing so many things at once. It's hard to keep track of that kind of stuff, but it shouldn't be long. Maybe another hour or two. You can see the feeder bands are coming through. We're already getting quite a bit of wind. I mean, not quite a bit, but we're getting some wind. Tons of rain. I'm having flashbacks of Adalia being here. Well, maybe this one will shine brighter. Maybe. Honestly, I feel bad. This town's gotten hit twice within a year, and they really don't need another hurricane. They really don't. So I really hope it's not too bad here for the people that live here. Yeah, so stay tuned. I believe this is streaming. I believe Dothan, Alabama is gonna. I've been working with them pretty closely. They were ones that were kind enough to loan me the Starlink so I don't lose connection. And yeah, let's do this. There's a lot of curfews, tall trees, a lot of things like that are really preventing me from getting to the spot that I would prefer, but we do with what we like. For a lot of this stream, I'm going to try to stream the entire time if I can. I'm mostly going to have my phone hooked into the dash and just kind of facing out. We're going to lose power. It's nighttime. I'll do the best I can, but these chase conditions are just not ideal. I'm going to try to get as a lot better footage and to load up on my YouTube when this is all done and over with. Once I get past the videos for the other 4 hurricanes I chased this year, but we'll do the best we can with what I got, and let's see what Helene has to offer us here. So I'm gonna put you guys on the dash, have you facing out, and you can watch things as they unfold. I'm guessing that the eyewall should be here in probably in another hour or two. It's hard to tell. I'm doing so many things at once. It's hard to keep track of that kind of stuff, but it shouldn't be long. Maybe another hour or two. You can see the feeder bands are coming through. We're already getting quite a bit of wind. I mean, not quite a bit, but we're getting some wind. Tons of rain. I'm having flashbacks of Adalia being here. Well, maybe this one will shine brighter. Maybe. Honestly, I feel bad. This town's gotten hit twice within a year, and they really don't need another hurricane. They really don't. So I really hope it's not too bad here for the people that live here. Yeah, so stay tuned. I believe this is streaming. I believe Dothan, Alabama is gonna. I've been working with them pretty closely. They were ones that were kind enough to loan me the Starlink so I don't lose connection. And yeah, let's do this. I'm gonna put you guys on the dash, have you facing out, and you can watch things as they unfold. Be here in probably in another hour or two. It's hard to tell. I'm doing so many things at once. It's hard to keep track of that kind of stuff, but it shouldn't be long. Maybe another hour or two. You can see the feeder bands are coming through. We're already getting quite a bit of wind. I mean, not quite a bit, but we're getting some wind. Tons of rain. I'm having flashbacks of Adalia being here. Well, maybe this one will shine brighter. Maybe. Honestly, I feel bad. This town's gotten hit twice within a year, and they really don't need another hurricane. They really don't. So I really hope it's not too bad here for the people that live here. Yeah, so stay tuned. I believe this is streaming. I believe Dothan, Alabama is gonna. I've been working with them pretty closely. They were ones that were kind enough to loan me the Starlink so I don't lose connection. And yeah, let's do this. Too. It's hard to tell. I'm doing so many things at once. It's hard to keep track of that kind of stuff, but it shouldn't be long. Maybe another hour or two. You can see the feeder bands are coming through. We're already getting quite a bit of wind. I mean, not quite a bit, but we're getting some wind. Tons of rain. I'm having flashbacks of Adalia being here. Well, maybe this one will shine brighter. Maybe. Honestly, I feel bad. This town's gotten hit twice within a year, and they really don't need another hurricane. They really don't. So I really hope it's not too bad here for the people that live here. Yeah, so stay tuned. I believe this is streaming. I believe Dothan, Alabama is gonna. I've been working with them pretty closely. They were ones that were kind enough to loan me the Starlink so I don't lose connection. And yeah, let's do this. It's hard to tell. I'm doing so many things at once. It's hard to keep track of that kind of stuff, but it shouldn't be long. Maybe another hour or two. You can see the feeder bands are coming through. We're already getting quite a bit of wind. I mean, not quite a bit, but we're getting some wind. Tons of rain. Try to get a lot better footage and to load up on my YouTube when this is all done and over with. Once I get past the videos for the other 4 hurricanes I chased this year. But we'll do the best we can with what I got, and let's see what Helene has to offer us here. So I'm gonna put you guys on the dash, have you facing out, and you can watch things as they unfold. I'm guessing that the eyewall should be here in probably in another hour or two. It's hard to tell. I'm doing so many things at once. It's hard to keep track of that kind of stuff, but it shouldn't be long. Maybe another hour or two. You can see the feeder bands are coming through. We're already getting quite a bit of wind. I mean, not quite a bit, but we're getting some wind. Tons of rain. I'm having flashbacks of Adalia being here. Well, maybe this one will shine brighter. Maybe. Honestly, I feel bad. This town's gotten hit twice within a year, and they really don't need another hurricane. They really don't. So I really hope it's not too bad here for the people that live here. Yeah, so stay tuned. I believe this is streaming. I believe Dothan, Alabama is gonna. I've been working with them pretty closely. They were ones that were kind enough to loan me the Starlink so I don't lose connection. And yeah, let's do this. Yeah, just bear with me. It's been a hell of a day. I suspect it's going to get worse. Sorry, everything's all wet. But don't worry, I got a contingency for that.
Did he call you?
Huh?
Did he call you?
No, what?
Cause, what's his name in there? That guy that you were following.
Yeah.
He was talking about going mobile.
Going out?
He said I can't make the call. He said he was going to call somebody about going mobile or something.
He can do what he wants. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
Not with a storm this strong.
Yeah.
I wanted to go mobile during Ian. I was like, no.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this one's gonna get wicked, man.
Yeah, it looks like some of those outer bands are probably starting to get to us in the next 10, 15.
Yeah.
Check the radar real quick. Really? Y'all, you guys stay on a specific channel when you guys chase, or?
I put that on channel 15 here, the high output frequency.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what though, man. I'm never used to that again.
Oh yeah. Especially when you're trying to take a turn real quick or trying to figure out what the hell you guys are doing. It's not easy quick. It's a lot easier to attack. Especially in the middle of this shit. I mean, that highway we came in is, I mean, it's 2 lanes either way.
Yeah. Maybe. I recognize it's not me.
I was about to say.
I recognize it.
I was hoping to run into him. I wasn't blind.
Yeah, I know Mike's let us pay attention to
Mike's Weather, like SpaghettiModels.com. Yeah. He seems like he's down there. He was chasing this one, right? You know where he's at?
I don't know. I haven't talked to him yet. I know Simon Brewer's here. He's pretty cool.
Right there.
Right in there. We just talked to Brett. He's the one that wanted to the cops.
I will never forget that fucking video of him in that tornado. You gotta go now! No, go, we're gonna die! That, I could still watch that video after the 50 times and still the hair will stick up on my arm from that.
Yep.
People just don't understand what it's like to do this shit, and then it's like...
Yeah, tell me about it.
Oh.
Cool. Alright, all goggled up like that. Have my GoPro. That's moving. Jason tried to call me, so I'm gonna go try to find him.
Inside?
I don't know. He tried to call my phone, but I got my live stream up.
Yeah, I think he was literally in there talking about...
This is a forewarned weather severe weather alert.
Hey everyone, I'm Chief Meteorologist David Paul. We are tracking Hurricane Helene, about to make landfall this evening in the Big Bend of Florida. It is a major hurricane, a Category 4 storm at this hour. Maximum sustained winds at 140 miles per hour. Just a ferocious storm bearing down on the Big Bend of Florida, pretty close to the city of Perry. A huge storm surge over 10 to 15 feet, maybe even up to 20 feet in spots. For the Wiregrass, it's a rainy evening, looking at plenty of showers coming on through southeast Alabama into Georgia and the Florida Panhandle. Winds have not been that bad, 10 to 15 miles per hour sustained, some gusts up to 20-25 miles per hour. A little breezier as we go through the evening hours and into the overnight, but the worst weather will be safely to the east of most of us, and that is some good news for the Wiregrass, not so good news as we look to the east and southeast. We have a storm chaser covering the storm for us, more specifically a hurricane chaser. That's what he does. He goes out there and gets into the eyes of these monster storms, records weather data at the same time. He's near Perry. That's a live feed from his camera as he watches the storm move into his area. We will have this all evening long and keep showing you pictures as the weather goes downhill there in the Big Bend of Florida. We'll get back to programming on TV. If you want nonstop live weather coverage over the next couple hours, go to the News 4 app. You'll find the live stream there. The Forewarned Weather app has that live stream, and you should be able to find it on WTVY.com. So on our digital platforms, the app as well. If you have that on your TV, the News 4 app, you can watch on there. Live coverage of Hurricane Helene online. Right now, if you're watching on TV, back to programming.
This has been a forewarned weather alert.
All right, everyone, if you're watching us on the stream, we're going to be covering the weather here for a couple hours, getting ready for our 10 p.m. newscast as we watch Hurricane Helene move into the Big Bend of Florida. This is a huge hurricane. It's a Category 4. Winds have come up, maximum sustained now at 140 miles per hour. So a solid Category 4 hurricane. Some impacts in the Wiregrass, some rain coming on through, a little breezy in spots, but it's not horrible out there. The worst of the weather will be to the east. That cone is showing that path, but the actual storm is more or less on the eastern side of that cone. So I'd focus more on this area right in through here. The Hurricane Center has been a little too far west with that cone for the past couple days. It continues to be a little too far to the west. The forward motion is 24 miles per hour, so we're not that far away from landfall. I do want to show you a live stream that we have. You saw that just a couple minutes ago if you were watching. This is from our hurricane chaser, Scott Jankowski. He is near Perry, Florida, and you can see the rain coming down there, a little gusty at times. Also, that rain, that wind will continue to increase in his area. He's got a Starlink, so should have good data flow as we go through the evening hours to send that information to us. So we are watching this for sure over the next several hours as Hurricane Helene makes landfall. Let's go back to graphics. Let's go over to Max 1. Let me show you the wind speeds in the Wiregrass. By the way, punch up our meteorologist, Ryan Duggar. Ryan's here with me as well. Ryan, say hi.
Hi, everyone.
All right, there he is. There he is.
Yeah, we're definitely tracking Hurricane Helene. This is definitely proving to be a ferocious storm as it started to approach the Big Bend, and we've been tracking this for the past several days. And what we've seen is just the energy and the steering winds have just been very favorable for this to become a monster. So David, this has definitely been a storm in the making for the past week, really.
Yeah, you know, I posted on this initially on social media on September the 14th. So that was 12 days ago that we could see in the ensembles that something was going to be brewing in the Gulf of Mexico. On that note, and we'll get to it probably at some point this evening, The ensembles are also showing another potential system in the Gulf of Mexico as we go towards the end of the first week of October. So we're not done after Helene. We'll keep watching more activity in the Gulf of Mexico. All right, the winds across the area. These are sustained winds, sustained at 14 miles per hour in Dothan. That's not that windy at all. 12 in Troy, 15 in Mariana, 18 in Donaldsonville. A little breezier near the coast, 24 there in Destin, 15 now. Sustained winds in Panama City, most of those coming in from the north. As we look at wind gusts, a little bit higher in spots, but many spots are not even recording any wind gusts. Some areas around 24 miles per hour, say around Mariana into the Donaldsonville area as well. Southward towards Destin, it's gusting at 38 miles per hour. Tropical storm force is 39, so even at the coast, we're not reaching that speed yet. 28 in Panama City. And generally speaking, many areas will not even see tropical storm force winds. I know there's been some tropical storm warnings in effect, and you think by having that warning in effect, you're going to see 40, 50 mile per hour winds. That's not a guarantee at all. Some of the winds may only stay in that 25 to 35 mile per hour range for gusts as we go through the evening hours and overnight, because the storm is far enough to the east of us. We're kind of on the fringe here. In fact, the central part of the area is seeing a moderate rainfall. The west side is seeing really not much of anything. You go farther east and we have some heavier rainfall. This band that is setting up is a band that will likely shift back into southeast Alabama over the next couple hours. It's really kind of an interesting animation here if you look at it. The returns here really aren't moving anywhere very quickly. These returns are very quickly moving up to the north and to the west. So if you kind of look at it as, you know how an accordion kind of stretches and compresses? Well, it's kind of like a compression happening right through here. So this is kind of squeezing out that moisture, now moving into parts of, say, Early County, Seminole County, Jackson County, and now the eastern, southeastern part here of Houston County. So within this band, as it moves on through, you may pick up an additional inch or 2 inches of rain. We've seen a lot of wet weather central, southern, and eastern parts of the area over the past couple days. Check out the rain rate here. It's pretty impressive around Blakely, towards Fort Gaines as well, about to increase in Henry County into Houston County. Some moderate rainfall now in Dothan, but certainly heavier off to the east there on 84 towards Georgia, southward into Florida, Jackson County. Some heavy rainfall coming on through Mariana. We've seen a lot of rain in the Mariana area for sure over the past day or so, and more moisture rolling in from the south and from the southeast. Ryan will break down that radar a bit more coming up as we go through the next couple hours here. Okay, I want to show you the big view, and there is Helene. It is a monster storm. The center is very evident on the radar and the satellite there. It's evident both ways. You can see the eye actually kind of clearing out this evening. You see that? It's, if we had sunlight and we had the visible satellite, you would see right down to the ocean floor there. It is really cleared out. That's why that wind speed has come up to 140 miles per hour sustained winds. It was at 130, now up to 140, so a solid Cat 4. A very wide eye, about 40 to 45 miles in diameter, so it's a very large, very powerful eye that is approaching the coast, the Big Bend area, and it looks like Perry will be right in the middle of it as we go through time. A very destructive storm ahead. So this is Perry, about right here, and that's where you're seeing that live picture where Scott Jankowski, our hurricane chaser, is this evening. So the winds there, not too bad, but I'll tell you, it's a night and day difference. Once you get into the eyewall, you can say, if you live in Dothan, yeah, I went through Hurricane Helene, and we are going through Hurricane Helene. But those who go through the eyewall can legitimately say, I went through Hurricane Helene, because the difference being in that eyewall is just dramatic. That's where the core of those winds are, those 140 mile per hour sustained winds and the gusts up to 150 or more. It's in that eyewall, a small part of that eyewall. And again, Perry, Florida will be taking the brunt of that. So that picture looks decent, right? If you were at, I think this is at a rest area is where he is. So if you ran inside, now you're going back to the vehicle, you could handle that weather right now in Perry. Give it another 2 hours, even an hour. That won't be the case. As the center of that storm moves into the Big Bend of Florida, conditions continue to deteriorate and then really deteriorate quickly. And the leading edge of that eye wall is starting to approach the coast, so going downhill certainly in a big way. It does move northward now. I do want to address the National Hurricane Center cone here briefly. There's been differences in opinion, not just me, but a lot of meteorologists out there as we have been forecasting this storm. The Hurricane Center has access to modeling and information that the general public doesn't have access to, that we don't have access to as meteorologists. And with that extra data, they've been forecasting a western track pretty much the entire time, and they continue to forecast a western track even at this hour. But as we look at a lot of the information available, the computer model data that gets put out every really few hours on different platforms, that data has been showing a landfall spot somewhere in here, and the center going up somewhere towards the Georgia-South Carolina line. And it looks like, as we continue to watch the radar images unfold, Helene is certainly kind of following the right side or just off the right side of that cone. So that cone probably should be shifted farther to the east. I have no control over that, obviously. Hurricane Center doesn't care what I think or what I say, but if we look at the radar returns here, it's kind of hugging the right side of this cone. So if you have any interest here in Florida or Georgia, just keep in mind this area is very likely to see the center of the storm, which on the flip side means this area here probably won't be as bad. And maybe like you, like me, you've got some friends in Tallahassee that are very concerned about this storm. Best case scenario is it goes off to the east of Tallahassee. But again, the fact that that eye wall is so huge, even if you're 30 miles away from the center of the storm, the impacts will be significant. And Tallahassee certainly within 30 miles of that eye wall as we go through the evening hours. So yeah, there will be big impacts here all the way through the same area hit by Idalia last year, hit by Debbie earlier this year. That area has been hit a lot over the past year or so. Let's move on here as we look at that radar and the satellite and that cone, which again may be a little bit farther to the east to be perfect, because it looks like the center is right here and we'll be kind of hugging that right side of the cone. So that puts it very close to Perry here in the next hour to 2 hours, and that outer eye wall right there is not too far away from the coast. It's pushing a lot of water as well, and that is a big threat as we go through time. Our in-house graph model, got to give it credit. This is the IBM graph model from the weather company, our computer provider for weather graphics, and this is their exclusive model, and it's been doing a really good job, not just with this storm, but it did a better job than the Hurricane Center cone. When you go back and look at Francine a couple weeks ago, it's done better than the cone overall with this storm as well. So a lot of different meteorologists around the country use this model, and it has done pretty well. So we're pretty happy to have it and to share it with you. Now, it may be a little too far to the east here. We'll see where that actual landfall spot is. It may be up here, not right here, but it's awfully close. And notice again how big that eye wall structure is at landfall right around 9:30 to 10 o'clock this evening. We are far enough away where that band of heavier rainfall that's developing kind of comes in and kind of sets up, then eventually lifts out as the center. You see it may go up there towards South Carolina and the Georgia border, even though this area is not in the cone. Remember, the cone's back here. The center may be out of that cone on the right side all the way up into the Carolinas. From there, the circulation kind of will linger over parts of Kentucky and Tennessee. All right, up close here for the evening hours and overnight, that's 8:30. Again, kind of a split here. Eastern parts of the area certainly in line to see more rainfall than western parts of the Wiregrass. Not much rain, Crenshaw to Covington counties. Dothan eastward, likely to see that heavier band kind of move in and linger over the next hour to 2 hours, and then eventually begin to pull away as we get towards midnight and beyond. There's the center of the storm. There's Tallahassee. So Tallahassee will be awfully close to at least part of that western eye wall as we go through the overnight, but the worst of the winds will likely be over towards, say, Valdosta and points northward at that hour. And there could be 100+ mile per hour wind gusts well into the state of Georgia. Remember, it's moving forward at about 24 miles per hour. It's really booking its way through the overnight into Georgia and beyond. For us, pretty quiet by 2 o'clock in the morning, certainly by tomorrow morning at 6. In fact, the sunshine breaks out. Tomorrow turns out to be a pretty good day. Look at that. During the day tomorrow, lots of sun for most of the wiregrass. High temperatures eventually into the lower 80s for our Friday. Rainfall will continue overnight, maybe a couple more inches again in spots here, especially central eastern parts. Even 2-3 inch totals a possibility. But as we go forward, the core of the heavy rainfall will be from the Big Bend, where landfall is, up through Georgia, where anywhere from 3 to 8 inches are likely. And if you've ever been up into this part of Georgia or South Carolina or North Carolina or Tennessee, it's very, very hilly. And you have some extra orographic lift from the Appalachians, so that can really enhance the rainfall totals. And it looks like some areas up there will see some significant flash flooding from the center of what's left of Helene at that point. That's why that track forecast is so important, because given, again, this model showing that track up here, that's a lot of extra rainfall that will be occurring as opposed to a track that would be farther to the west. But I'm favoring that eastern track for sure. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you the winds here from that same graph model. 100 plus there at Cedar Key this evening, still looking at winds around 100 there, even though they're removed from the actual center. There's the center and the eye wall in that general area at 10 p.m. Winds here, and this may be overdoing it a little bit. Usually the models are a little too aggressive on the wind speed. So showing a gust of 30 in Dothan at 10 p.m., 23 in Troy, 33 Panama City, 26 Crestview, 20 in Auburn, 22 there in Albany. As we go through time, some of the stronger winds work in. That's at midnight, 34 in Dothan, but the areas here in purple, say Early County, may see winds 40, 45 miles per hour, even maybe a 50 there, eastern parts of Miller County. I wouldn't rule it out in Seminole County as well. Jackson County, some gusty winds, probably 35 to 40 miles per hour in gusts. Sustained winds are typically about 15 to 20 miles per hour lower than the gust speeds. So this is kind of the peak winds that we could see. Again, 39 makes it a tropical storm. Many areas in Alabama will not see tropical storm force winds. Some areas in southwest Georgia certainly will. And as you go farther to the east, hurricane force winds are likely. Look at that, 1 o'clock in the morning. There's a gust showing up in the model over 77 miles per hour there in the Valdosta area. That carries northward then, again, some big winds even into North Carolina. You think about where Columbia is compared to where landfall is, way down there, still looking at winds perhaps gusting over 50 miles per hour tomorrow morning at 7. And Atlanta could see stronger winds than what we'll see here in a good chunk of the wiregrass with 35 to 45 mile per hour gusts. Plenty of wind to carry through parts of Kentucky and Tennessee tomorrow. For us, these are again wind gusts at about 20 miles per hour, sustained winds tomorrow 10 to 15. So a breezy day, but looking pretty good. This is a huge story. It really is. If you look, 20 years from now back on, hey, remember Helene back in 2024? Yeah, the storm surge was incredible. Look at that. Anywhere from really 10 to 20 feet around the Big Bend of Florida, southward too. I saw some video coming out of Tampa today where there was a bridge with the waves crashing over the bridge, and there was still traffic moving along on that road. Just incredible to see. It's amazing how much water a storm like this can push, especially with a huge wind field, one of the biggest storms in size in a long time, and it's pushing a lot of water with those 140 mile per hour winds, and it's pushing it to the northeast. Of course, the center track is somewhere in here, so the water can't go back that other way. It's going to be getting pushed northward, and then it runs into the land, so it kind of gets just squeezed and really rises right where that landfall spot is, and then just to the right. And if that landfall spot is about right here, this is the area most likely to see that storm surge, which could be 15 to 20 feet. I mean, think about that, 15 to 20 feet. I'm about 6 feet tall. That's about 3 of me. That's incredible to see that much water above what is normally dry ground. And a lot of houses are in the path. Now, there's not much here near the coast, to be fair, because it is a very marshy, low-lying area, but there are some fish encampments. There are some towns. Cedar Key, for example. You like oysters? You probably had Cedar Key oysters before. That's the area that will be hit hard by that storm surge, all the way up inland, looking at a pretty good rise of water. That will push a fair amount of water well inland across parts of the Big Bend of Florida. So certainly some bad news. At the coast here tomorrow, Double red flags, winds west, the seas 6 to 10 feet. That's not bad compared to what we're looking at farther to the east there in the Big Bend of Florida. So that's an overview of what's happening as we go into the evening hours here. Let's do a bit of a radar breakdown. We can use that Tallahasse radar from the National Weather Service, and I'll give Ryan a minute to pull it up. Go ahead and punch over on Max 1 if you're ready for that, and take over. Go ahead.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So this is, of course, we're going to be watching radar very closely for the next couple of hours, as we have been for much of the day, and we'll kind of go make our way towards the Tallahasse radar. Now we're seeing, I mean, just look at the rain bands coming in from Hurricane Helene here. You can really see the forward motion of this storm, why there's so much wind also pushing that seawater. Look how fast these rain bands are really moving into the coastline. So like David was saying earlier, even though these areas are still kind of outside of the eye wall, even though you're just about 30 miles out, you can still see that the general winds really close to the eye wall are still very dangerous. And so we can kind of see through the winds here. Let me switch to kind of our velocity here. Just into Tallahasse, of course, you have the separation between the ingoing winds and the outgoing winds. The green and the blue is what's coming towards the radar, and the red is what's going away from the radar. But you can see just south into, just south of I-10 right here into Highway 98, Dowling Park, we really see these blue colors. And typically when we're tracking, usually a lot of time when we're putting up base velocity, we're tracking thunderstorms that have really high wind gusts. Sometimes you can get a few pixels of this color, and maybe even some tornadoes that have really bright red and green. But just look at the wind field on this. Now granted, this is about from where we're kind of seeing these blues, a little bit more than 50 miles out from the radar site. Now what that means is we're kind of looking up into the upper part of the atmosphere. The radar beam goes straight across while the Earth curves, so you're kind of looking more into the top of the clouds. But this is just an indication. I mean, just 50 miles away, you have winds up around 92 miles per hour, a little bit lighter, 75, 62, closer to Dowling Park, 81 miles per hour. And so it'll be just a little bit less on the surface, likely seeing gusts up to 60 to 70 miles per hour at this time. So we can really see the punch that Helene is really going to be making for the overnight hours, especially where you see areas just to the east of the eye wall, that general rotation pushing all of that wind and energy inland. That's why they're going to definitely be seeing quite a busy night with all of this activity. And in the meantime, while we were kind of watching that, I'll go back to radar here. I wanted to point out really the effects that we're seeing for this system right now. So I'm going to kind of zoom out here so we can really see the eye starting to really make its way close towards, really trying to make its way towards Perry, Florida, right there. So what I've been looking at is in terms of power outages right now. Florida, I've been using poweroutage.us. This has some pretty good indication of some of the customers that we're tracking as well. Some areas along the coastline, Tampa, the county in Tampa, reporting around 198,000 people without, or customers without power, and it's thousands more just along the western coastline of Florida. Not too many reported where Helene is really starting to make its way in, but we can likely see that number continue to go up. Even Franklin County, closer to Apalachicola, seeing around 3,000 customers without power. So these types of winds, we're going to be seeing widespread, likely widespread damage of trees down, power lines down. People can be without power for several hours. Now for Georgia, not too many reported outages just yet from Helene. But again, as Helene starts to make its way inland, that will likely change. And also for our area, looking at the Wiregrass Electric Cooperative numbers, we've only seen a couple outages, not even really related to much of the storm. Alabama Power, there have been a couple of their customers affected by some of the things happening with Helene, but again, very not as widespread as we've seen along the western coastline of Florida right here. And I'll also take this moment to kind of give a wider view back out of Helene right here, as we can kind of see. So one thing, as we see Helene here, of course, we're watching for the storm surge making its way into the Big Bend, into Perry as well. Going to be, like we just said earlier, 15 to 20 feet. If you can imagine, that's feet above the shoreline. So we can just imagine those low-level houses likely being completely flooded where the water can make its way on shore. And I also wanted to point out, already for areas such as along the Georgia coastline into Savannah, I actually have my own sister who lives in Savannah, and she has already been telling me that multiple waterspouts have been making their way closer to the coastline. They've had multiple tornado warnings in the past few hours. So even while they're still far away from Helene, they're seeing the effects of this already. And they'll likely see that those heavy wind gusts also start to come into play here over the next few hours. And actually, I know David and I were talking about this a little bit earlier too, talking about the winds associated with this storm while we were watching it on the radar, kind of upper level clouds when we were watching it through the base velocity product there. I'll kind of go back to what we were looking at for base velocity. So again, we're looking at these blue pixels. Again, this is around 80 to 90 mile per hour winds here. That's upper level in the clouds, but there are also some buoys that we can actually see their recorded data that they're bringing in. That includes temperature, also winds, and wind gusts as well. So for I've been checking the National Data Buoy Center for the updates on what the buoys are showing in terms of winds, and they're continuing to climb. Cedar Key right now already putting out wind gusts around 70 miles per hour, and their wind speeds, which is just a little bit below that, around 50 miles per hour already. So they're already seeing, with Helene continuing to make its way in, that those winds are just continuing to build at the surface. So there's definitely a lot to look for, especially for these areas. I think that this will definitely be a very memorable storm for years to come. And, you know, we've been tracking this for the past several days. We saw initiation of the storm just a little bit to the south, or just to the southeast of the Yucatan Peninsula in the Caribbean. There were definitely some indications that the models wanted to pick it up into the Gulf of Mexico. But in the meantime, what has made this storm so interesting to look at as well is just the initial uncertainty around the path of this storm and the evolution of this storm. Like just this past Saturday, when I was looking at the potential path of Helene, what it was going to be doing, some of the models were still keeping this storm out in the central part of the Gulf of Mexico through the weekend, and then taking it up early next week. And so finally, we were starting to see some good agreements towards the end of the weekend, and luckily that's really what panned out. So the closer we got to Helene starting to make its way up the Florida coastline, that's when we had a better idea. Likely going to be continuing to make its way on the east side of that cone. Let me see if I can pull up the cone here, if we still got it. We'll look at the radar imagery one more time there, and we can just see really close along where that where the center of that storm is. You can really see it just right on the edge of that eastern line of the cone right there. So it's likely going to be continuing that path, and also really just hugging that line, especially towards areas like Perry, Florida, and really close to Tallahasse. So this is what we're really watching for. The further east this eye is, of course, for our area like the Wiregrass, we'll likely not see the biggest effects. Still going to be seeing wind gusts around 45 miles per hour, especially for more of our eastern counties, even into Georgia, like Early County and Seminole County. Still some rain, but some areas are still going to be seeing that divide. So we're just going to be watching out for the eventual path of this storm. But David, like I said, I mean, this has been quite an interesting storm to follow for the past few days.
Yeah, it's been a huge storm as well. It's just amazing to see how quickly a storm can really intensify given two key ingredients, all right? You got to have warm water, number one, but you've got to have really good outflow, good exhaust up above to allow that rising air to be pushed out, to allow more rising air to occur. So you've got to have that combination, and everything is happening right now for Helene. It is really blowing up into a huge, huge storm. We are on the fringe of it, the western fringe, which is the best place to be for sure. Some showers, light in nature in the Dothan area, northward and westward and southward. But notice here, if you look at 431 and then 231 south, that's kind of the cutoff between some really heavy rainfall and some very light rainfall. There are pockets of orange mixed in there across at least parts of Georgia into far southeast Alabama and Jackson County in particular. That is moving a little to the west. It won't go too far to the west. Notice here, these returns are actually pushing in the opposite direction. So this is going to be kind of the cutoff as we go through the overnight period here. If you are to the west, say of Enterprise, not much more rainfall at all. If you are in the Dothan area, northward, southward, or eastward, there is still more rain to come, and it is really coming down in buckets here. A good chunk of Early County into really most now of Houston County, at least the eastern, say 2/3 of Houston County, very, very wet. In parts of Henry County as well, very wet. So we have a camera right here, and you're looking at it right there. That's at the Southeast Health Center. It's right here at the circle in 84. So that is looking up into this direction, and you can kind of see some of the clouds coming at the camera, and those clouds are producing some pretty good rainfall. So we'll flip back to that in just a bit. I'm sure we'll see some pretty good rain showing up at that time. All right, I want to take you southward here. So there's a look at Tallahasse. That's the Big Bend. You've heard the Big Bend a lot. It's right here just to the southeast, basically south-southeast of Tallahasse, and it looks like the center comes very close to the Big Bend. It's wobbling a little bit, and it's interesting because big hurricanes will wobble a little bit back and forth, but generally the motion is to the north-northeast, and that carries it up into this area as we go through the next couple hours. There's Perry, and we have Scott Jankowski. I think he's about right here, if I remember correctly on the map, and that's his view. So maybe he's in this little bit of a lull before the rain kicks back in, but he is about to go through that, and that is the eyewall of a Cat 4, a solid Cat 4 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 140 miles per hour. We'll see if that shot stays up. He has a Starlink to work with. That's the satellite internet connection, so that should certainly help him out and help us be able to see what is happening, at least for maybe part of that eye wall. I'd be surprised if we get to see him in the eye of the hurricane because it is really packing a punch. So what's interesting here, and maybe you can see it, is all that lightning. That is some intense lightning, especially on the northwestern quadrant of this hurricane. That's where all basically the water is piling up. That circulation is kind of pushing all that water right here. That's why it's so deep red as well. That's where the majority of the heavy rainfall is at this hour. So all that moisture is kind of coming together. It's got to go somewhere. It can't go down into the ocean. It's going up into the sky where it's really cold, and that rising air motion is causing all those lightning strikes to occur. So that's a sign of a very intense, mature hurricane that is sustaining itself over that very warm water at about 84 to 86 degrees there in this part of the Gulf of Mexico. So very impressive to see. And that's what we're looking at here. So he's getting into some of these outer bands of the actual eye wall. So the outer bands are huge, but he's approaching the eye wall. So these bands will become a little more intense. You can kind of tell we must be looking to the north here because the rain is moving from right to left. And you can kind of see with the street lights, which will probably fade at some point, all that rain being blown here from left, from right to left on your screen. So check out the vehicles too. You can kind of see it. If you've ever been someplace where it snows, that's kind of what it looks like, where you get blowing snow coming off a vehicle, but that's just rain. And it hits the vehicles and it makes the raindrops really small, and they really show up very well with the bright light up above. So that's what we're looking at again from Perry, somewhere right, I think it's right in here, if I recall, somewhere here just to the west of Perry. And that will be pretty close to where the eye comes ashore. So there's Tallahasse. Tallahasse is going to be close to getting into that eye wall If it were to move straight northward at this point, Tallahasse would be right on the edge of that western eye wall. If that north-northeast track continues, then it will be somewhere just off to the east of Tallahasse. So we're watching it, a very strong storm, a very fat eye wall also. Notice how thick that area is here from north to south, and it is really packing a punch. Let me show you, we'll show you a couple things here, and Ryan was kind of showing this as well, but the wind flow in the atmosphere is really phenomenal to see when you look at the base velocity. I'll animate that also over the past hour. And it's pretty easy to see exactly where the center of circulation is. It's right here. You've got winds coming towards the radar site. You've got winds going away from the radar site. And, you know, these wind speeds are really incredible. We can maybe plot. I'm going to do two things here. I want to show you, I'm going to do just good old-fashioned meteorology. I'm going to go and show you exactly where the center is right now, which is about right here. And then where the center was when this loop started, which was about right in through here. So it's more or less on a north-northeast track, and if I just put a line, if that were to continue, that would put the eye somewhere like that. So we'll see if that does in fact hold, or if it kind of wobbles left or wobbles to the right. But there's Perry, there's Alligator Point. So we were kind of pinpointing all week Alligator Point to Perry and the Big Bend, and it's going to land right there in the Big Bend, very close to Tallahasse. This is probably the best place for a hurricane to make landfall, in the sense that there's not as much infrastructure or lives along the coast here. Florida's caked with high rises and people everywhere along the coast, except for this area. It's kind of the least populated coastal area in the state of Florida. There's a look at that live camera here. So he's getting into some of the heavier downpours as that storm approaches. Let me go back to that radar view. So there's a look at the live cam, and he's right in here, Scott's right in here. He's not into the worst of it yet, but you can tell the winds are increasing. And as he gets closer and closer to that eye wall, the winds will be stronger and stronger. And it's really, you can see every single scan that comes in is really moving northward at a pretty good clip, about 24 miles per hour forward speed. So let's do that. We're 24 miles per hour to the north. We are from the eye wall to the coast. If it continues on that track, 33 miles away, so just over an hour from the eye making landfall. That would put it at about 8:39 if we had to peg it based on what we're seeing right here. That's a possibility. Let's see, 33 miles. Yeah, maybe a little bit past that, maybe 9:45, somewhere in that ballpark. But anyway, that eye wall is about to reach the coast. In fact, you can say it already is here, areas down to the south and to the southeast. So his conditions will be going downhill pretty quickly. And again, this storm is pushing a lot of water northward. So it's not just the area in the Big Bend that will be impacted. It's the area to the east as well. The storm surge, I mean, even here, that water is coming up, and it's kind of like moving along the coast a little bit, but the majority of it is being pushed up here from those winds, kind of piling it up. So that's where the highest storm surge will be. Areas to the east there towards Steinhatchee and just to the south. And even this area here, it will be very, very significant. The storm surge will be pretty incredible for sure. On the flip side, the water here is being pushed southward and kind of away from the coast, but it's all piling up all along the west coast there of the Florida Peninsula. So this is a Category 4 hurricane in Helene. The worst part of the rain is on the northern side of this hurricane. So as it moves in, it will be packing a punch. And usually you get some of the strongest wind gusts to occur where you have the rain, because there's a downward transfer of momentum when you've got all the raindrops to carry that wind energy down to the surface. So a very potent circulation here. Again, we are on the fringe of this system, and as it moves northward here, passing likely east of Tallahasse, the strongest winds will be from that center track and then eastward. So a good chunk of northeast Florida will see some strong winds. A good chunk of the Florida Peninsula will see strong winds. Of course, a good part of Georgia will also, but the winds here not as bad. The rain here not as bad, which is some good news. But boy, it is really kicking there in Perry as Scott rides out this storm. That's what he does. He's actually a mechanic, believe it or not. He's an ASC certified mechanic. That's his day job. So he knows vehicles, but he has a passion for weather. Went through Charlie back in 2004 and is continuing to this day to take time off work to go chase these hurricanes. And he's not just chasing for the fun of it, but he's got data collection devices with him, so he can collect the data and then share that after the fact. And that's what everyone is trying to learn from. Anyone who's in the weather industry is trying to always learn. Every single storm that comes along, it's a learning opportunity. I'm learning every single day. I've been doing this for over 27 years. I'm still learning, and there's a lot of data to collect and then go back and observe with a storm like this. And it is a powerful hurricane, a Category 4. Category 4. We don't see those too often. We certainly don't see Cat 4s. How many miles away from Dothan right now? Not that many miles away. The center of that storm. Let's go from where Dothan is, and I'll bring out my distance calculator. From the center of Helene to Dothan is only 150 miles. From Dothan to that eyewall, it's only 113 miles. So it's not that far away. This would be a different story. It would be a different story for the Wiregrass if this storm were making landfall somewhere around Mexico Beach again, or Panama City, or even Destin. You take this storm and put this storm on this track in Panama City, guess what? The center of that is coming right up into the Dothan area, right up towards Abbeville, right up towards Eufaula. That'd be a different story for us. We're only 80 miles away, 75 miles away from Dothan to the coast. So yeah, it would be a completely different story. Now, the flip side of that is someone's going to bear the brunt of the storm. It's not us this time, but it will be the Big Bend of Florida, which has been hit now. This will be the third time in the last week or last year or so, and then, of course, a good chunk here of Georgia as well. So impressive to watch. Those live pictures come in. We'll keep hoping that stream stays up as we go through the next couple hours there as Hurricane Helene makes landfall. If you know anyone in Valdosta, they're going to be on the right side of the center of circulation. Hopefully they are prepared. There's only so much you can do. I mean, you get to the point where if a tree's going to fall, a tree's going to fall. You can't brace a tree. So the key is, if you know anyone in this area, or maybe you're watching from somewhere in this area, we are streaming worldwide, you want to get someplace safe. And you want to think about trees. You want to think about trees outside your house and where they might fall. And I've learned over the years, I moved to South Louisiana in 2005, near the coast in Lafayette. So I've been in hurricane country for 19 years doing these storms. I learned in 2008 with Hurricane Gustav just how deadly the trees can be in a hurricane. And as a tree, there was one fatality in Lafayette, September 1st of 2008. It was a tree that fell on a house. That was kind of a wake-up call, like, wow, yeah, we've got a lot of beautiful big trees across the South, but they can be deadly. So you've got to be aware of the trees around your place. Even if you live in the Wiregrass, and even though the winds are not that bad this evening or overnight, you still have to think about the trees. I've got big trees around my place, and I'm always thinking about those trees, because sometimes a big tree can fall in a 30-mile-per-hour wind gust. I had a huge tree fall about 3 weeks ago. It was sunny and winds were 5 miles per hour, but that tree had a lot of damage, bug, termite damage, and it just fell, thankfully away from the house and into the forest, but it fell. So that can happen, and because the ground here is so wet, you've got to be aware of that risk. So certainly we had that happen not only in hurricanes, we've had that happen in the Wiregrass, and fatalities, loss of life from trees falling on structures. It happens during straight line wind events. It happens during tornadoes. It happens during hurricanes. It happens during tropical storms. It happens sometimes for no reason at all during a pop-up thunderstorm in the summertime. So think about the wind flow. Think about where the winds are coming in from. If a tree were to fall, where is it going to fall? You don't want to be in that part of the house, simply put. All right, so there's the center of the hurricane approaching the Big Bend of Florida. These pictures, again, are from Perry, Florida. and our storm chaser, Scott Jankowski. I don't know if we can talk to Scott at some point again this evening. We will try. We had him earlier during the 5 o'clock and the 6 o'clock show. He started out in Tallahasse and then was trying to figure out the best place to go, which is in most of our minds the worst place to go. You don't want to go into the eye of a hurricane. Most of us don't, but he does. So he's trying to position himself to be in the eye of that hurricane. So he's right in this area. I'm not sure if it's 98 or if it's up here on 19. I think it's 98, to be honest with you. I think it's right here is where he is. But he's in this area here of green. I'm going to actually look at my phone because he texted me exactly where he was. I'm going to see if I can't pop up that map and check it out. But I think it's this area right here by Perry, and he'll be there as long as he can. And hopefully he's there for the duration of the storm, captures the data that we're looking for, captures the video as well, so we can kind of see what it looks like, and can stay in touch with us. So he's actually along, let's see, he's actually along 19, so that rest area where he was setting up, he's actually right here, all right? So we'll remember that spot, right here, just northwest of Perry. That's the picture that he's putting out. He's not that far away from the eyewall. That eyewall will come in. It's moving at about 24 miles per hour northward, so it's moving very, very quickly. I have lightning turned off here, but if I turn back lightning, can I go here? I don't have, yeah, here it is. There's the lightning turned back on. So there's a look at the lightning strikes. That's just impressive to see. And from an analysis standpoint, it kind of tells us where the greatest rising air motion is. So it's kind of cool to have that lightning data on the map at the same time. It looks like there's a little bit of a bulge happening there. You see that? It was circular and now it's kind of elliptical shaped, and that can happen with a very powerful storm like this. You have what are called mesovortices that rotate around the inner part of the eyewall. So if you were to look at a high resolution imagery of a hurricane, whether it's a visible satellite or if we crank down the sensitivity on the radar, you would see probably 5 to 8 different, look like little tornadoes basically, rotating around the inside of the eyewall. So we call those mesovortices, and those mesovortices actually do a lot of the damage because they act like mini tornadoes right along the inner rim there of the eyewall. So one of those mesovortices may be kind of bulging out here a little bit. You see that right there, that little bulge? And sometimes one mesovortice can be the dominant one, and it actually creates a new center of circulation, or what we typically call a wobble if we look at the radar. So there could be a wobble, which is kind of a reforming of the center of circulation just off to the east. And we'll see if that carries through. But regardless, that eyewall is approaching the coast. Again, there's not much here to show up as far as city names because there's really just not much on the coast in that part of Florida. Heavy rainfall, lots of lightning. Again, there's been some convergence of all that moisture here in the northwestern quadrant of this storm, and that's why there's so much lightning. That moisture is coming together, it's going up into the air where it's cold, it's forming ice crystals. Those ice crystals bump together, they form charges, the charges separate, you get lightning. So we see that a lot in a severe thunderstorm. If there's an uptick in lightning, that means there's an uptick in the updraft, and that can lead to rotation. So in this situation, we're not looking for rotation so much as where we're seeing the most intense rainfall occur with this hurricane. This is continuing to look very impressive as it moves up here. So some of the strongest winds, again, those maximum sustained winds at 140 miles per hour, some of those strongest winds are probably contained right in this area. I will pause this and I'll go to the current view. Let me switch over to the base velocity, just to kind of get an idea of what we're looking at. And it's impressive when the scale, color scale, does not account for the highest winds that we're seeing. Typically, if you watch us for severe weather, and we're tracking a tornado moving on through the wiregrass, we're looking for pinks and greens and maybe blues. we rarely ever see purples, and we never see it really fall off the scale like that. So you're talking about those winds up there at radar level, which is a few thousand feet in the sky, well over 100 miles per hour. I'll plot some of these just to kind of tell you what we're looking at. There's 97, there's 100. What do we have there? 113. So it won't even plot here for me. 114. Looks like that's kind of the upper limit of what we can plot is 114. There's 124. So those are, again, elevated winds. And that's not even in, think about that, that's not even in the eyewall. The eyewall is more or less down here. So yeah, to have 124 here, that's where the strongest winds are, down there in the eyewall. Since we have this up, let me do a quick look at those mesovortices. Maybe we can get a chance to see them. Let me go to properties. And this is a test. This is just a test. Yeah. Let me see. I can crank down that, I guess as far as I can crank down that sensitivity. So we can maybe see a little bit better what some of those mesovortices. Maybe we can count how many there are. I mean, from what we can tell here. There's one right here. Let's see. There's two. There's three. There's four. There's five, so it looks like we can see at least five here if we look at the radar. 5 mesovortices at least rotating around the center of circulation. That is a very fat eye wall that is about to move into the Big Bend of Florida. This is really going to be a devastating storm. If you've ever been to Tallahasse, it's known as Tree City. There are so many big, beautiful trees in Tallahasse. And that caused a lot of problems back in the springtime with a couple of tornadoes that came on through. A lot of tree damage, a lot of power outages as a result. If any part of this eye wall makes it into Tallahasse, there are going to be significant power outages due to trees falling. Certainly from Tallahasse off to the east, there's going to be a lot of damage. There's already been a lot of damage from, again, Idalia that came on through last summer and some of the impacts from Debbie earlier. This area has been hit hard along the I-10 corridor over the past year. Nothing like this though. This is a Category 4 hurricane. You know, you think about the scale, you've got Cat 1 to Cat 5, I mean Cat 4, 140 mile per hour winds. That's way up the scale for sure. So a very intense storm here, moving towards the coast and packing a significant punch for sure. And that rain is just relentless. So there's Perry. So Scott is about to get into the worst of it. Again, he is set up right here. And you can see the wind kicking pretty good, the raindrops blowing from right to left. So it's kind of cool because we're kind of looking northward here and just kind of seeing what that looks like as that wind blows across from right to left. And he's not even into the worst of it quite yet, but he will be before too long. I know, Ryan, you're analyzing some data as well. I've been talking for a minute, so what do you have on your end?
Yeah, David, I was really closely looking at Scott's view of just how much that rain is really bouncing off those cars. As he's getting closer to the eye, there's quite a bit of wind that he's going to be experiencing. We can kind of see it right there. We really just see the rain at one point is falling vertically, and then we can see just some wind take it sideways. This is how strong that rain is taking off the cars. Almost looks, like you said earlier, David, almost like snow coming off the roof of those cars. And so we can even just see some power flicker right there. We can see definitely some power outages. Hopefully that comes back on very soon. But that's what is really going to be pretty common, especially with where Scott is. And so hopefully he can get that back on.
I don't think it's coming back.
Yeah, maybe not coming back on.
I think it's one and done.
Yeah,
once
one
you
and
lose
done.
that, it's done.
Absolutely. So scenes like that are going to be very common, especially ahead of this eye. And really quick, going back to the wide view of radar. Of course, what we've been saying is this has been a Category 4 hurricane, has max sustained winds of 140 miles per hour. That's going to be close to the winds that Scott's going to be experiencing over the next hour or so. We've been following the track of this storm very closely as it makes its way into, really going to be centered on Perry in the next hour or so as possible. Really close along the eastern side of that track, and so that's been good for us. That proves that the eye is kind of making its way a little bit farther to the east, taking more of those really heavy wind gusts from our area. Likely going to be seeing winds around, gusts up to about 45 miles per hour, especially for our Georgia counties, like parts of Early County, Seminole County as well. I can see we have the Scott's camera back up too. Now that the lights, and we're actually getting a report that from some of our directors in the back, they've seen some transformers popping in the background as well, just showing that power is likely going out for much of that area. And so that's, again, like I said, that's going to be something to really watch out for. Why we've been telling everyone, if this eye was to really make its way closer through our area, so this is some of the stuff to really prepare for. Power outages, trees down, power lines down as well. So Scott is definitely getting into the thick of it, and I'll show where Scott is again as the eye starts to make its way in. But yeah, we've been tracking this very closely. I wanted to zoom out one more time and just kind of show that even for areas of actually, I'm going to go back right here. Even for areas of Georgia that aren't quite in the thick of it yet, there's actually plenty of tornado warnings in effect for areas of south central Georgia into along the Atlantic coastline. Many of these cells are spinning up and actually carrying tornadoes into areas such as like I-16, making their way in from the Atlantic Ocean inland. And so for this area, they're going to be seeing those winds increase, but right now they're dealing with tornadoes as well. I've gotten some reports from my sister in Savannah. They're hunkered down right now, keeping safe as they're watching this develop, and as Helene still kind of makes its way into their area. First, I wanted to kind of go back to our area for a second before I make my way to radar, just really show the current wind speeds that we're seeing for our area right now. And we can see that really just starting to see some breeziness make its way into our area. Winds around 10 to 15 miles per hour. So just not seeing a ton of winds and activity, or at least wind speeds right now. And this is about 150 miles or 130 miles out from the center of Helene's eye. Really what we have seen for the past couple of hours is actually wind gusts farther to our west. That's actually associated with kind of like a jet that's making its way in from how Helene is behaving. It's actually kind of sucking in some dry air farther from the north into our area. That's why they're seeing wind gusts close to 30 miles per hour, just a little bit above that. Some pockets of gustiness here and there. But again, we're not seeing anything compared to what Tallahasse or those areas are seeing as Helene makes landfall. So let's check out the radar right here. Again, we can kind of see for our area a little bit of a divide where the moisture is a little bit cut off. We're still seeing for parts of Henry, Houston County into Early County, Seminole counties, they're still getting quite a bit of that rainfall consistently like we've seen throughout the day. Then you go to parts of western Geneva County, Coffee County, that's where rainfall is starting to get a little bit more sparse, but that all changes the closer you get to Tallahasse. This is what we've been watching very closely for the past hour. Check out the eye. Most of that rain on the north part of that eye wall there, and all the lightning strikes, just an indication of how much uplift for this storm there is. And so we can see a lot of energy there, and that's just a good indication of also the winds that are making their way on shore.
And the stretching of the eye too, you see that?
Yeah, yeah, stretching. Yeah, you can see the stretching of the eye, almost kind of making its way a little bit wider from the west to the east. So that's very interesting to see as well. And kind of zooming into where we were watching for Scott's position, it's really, we've been keeping this area in our mind. I'll try and draw a little bit. It'll be yellow, but we can kind of see the arrow right there. So he's kind of in this area, starting to get more into the area of where the heaviest rain is really making its way in. Earlier we were able to watch live the street lights flicker on and off. Now they're completely off. Our directors informed us that while they were watching this, that there were even transformers as well. And so we've been watching this very closely for what Scott has been watching. In fact, I think one of our directors was saying that we could maybe even see one of the transformers.
No, I think what we're seeing there on the right side of the screen, that's actually just a light in the distance, and then when the raindrops hit the windshield, it's kind of sparkling. Looks like it's blowing up, but that's just sparkling of the light from the distance there.
Right, okay. So yeah, so luckily Scott's got a little bit of light to work with along with the headlights to see how that rain is, but we can kind of see through even just along the street there. That's also a good indication of the bands of rain, how fast that rain is moving in for where Scott is as well. So being in the path of this storm, you're getting this intense rainfall moving quite fast inland as well. And so it's going to be more of like the that stinging rain. And I'll kind of zoom out here again and delete the circle that we have here, and kind of show yet again the winds that we're working with in this area.
So I got a note on that. My buddy Ryan Towell, who I went to college with as a meteorologist, he just texted me, Ryan. He's on radar scope, kind of going through some numbers. 156.6 miles per hour, the highest he saw on where you're looking.
Wow. 156 miles per hour. That again, just an indication, even with the radar products that we have, this is above the surface. You can still get gusts in between that are around 156 miles per hour. Can you imagine being or standing in the middle of that? That is some very intense wind. And what David was even talking about earlier for these winds as well, we're getting colors that we typically don't see when we're doing severe weather coverage. Again, usually we're looking for, I'll see if I can circle it right here. We're looking for greens like this, maybe even some blues or, some reds or pinks. But now we're getting winds coming in from this radar site that are quite above what we usually see, and I'll kind of pinpoint what those winds are. This is taking it up to 103 miles per hour, 93 and 82, going over to the blues. The blues and the greens is what's making its way, or the winds making their way into the radar site, and we're seeing 88, 100 miles per hour, 86. 98, 111. So we really see, especially closer to the circulation, or the center of circulation, which is farther down here, that is where you're going to be seeing the most powerful winds. That's why we've been tracking the eye of Hurricane Helene so closely. And I wanted to remind everyone that Hurricane Helene has made its way to Category 4 hurricane status. That's max sustained winds of 140 miles per hour. This is definitely a ferocious storm as it's making its way into the coastline right there. And while we're at it too, I'll kind of show, we've been showing the winds, what that usually does, especially along the coastline for this storm, along the coastline beaches. That's why storm surge is such an important thing to talk about. And I'll see if we can pull up the graphic right here, just showing the peak storm surge that is possible with this storm. Many areas have been, especially along western Florida, have been watching out for storm surge like this, and even for where the eye is making landfall, 15 to 20 feet. That's above ground level. And so if you can imagine one-story houses just completely underwater, and David was saying earlier, he's about 6 feet tall, so this is about or just a little bit less than 4 more Davids if you stack them on top of each other. So this is definitely a big situation to watch for, especially if you're along the coastline. That's why evacuations were so important.
A lot of water.
Yeah, tons of water. And again, before I give it back to you, David, I wanted to point out we've had some outages sort of come in, especially along the western parts of Florida. I'm using some data from poweroutage.us where they're tracking customers with multiple power companies as well. And where we saw really close to where Helene's eye is now, that was in the lower thousands. Now for let's see, Dixie County, that's up to 5,000 outages now. Taylor County, which is where Perry is kind of located, that is now around 1,000 power outages, and Franklin still at 2,000. So this number has been going up. For our area, we're still seeing only a couple outages, some associated with, from what Alabama Power has been reporting, some lightning strikes and maybe even some heavy rainfall. And Georgia, in the path of Helene, hasn't seen a ton of outages yet. They've really been seeing more outages closer to where a lot of those tornado warnings have been going through. But like I said, kind of how we saw with Scott's live stream, that scene is what we're going to be seeing more of as the night continues, David.
Yeah, let's go back to Max 2. I want to show you the structure in the atmosphere. If you were watching this week, I was cautiously optimistic that the track would be east of Tallahasse, even though that hurricane forecast cone was coming towards parts of southeast Alabama. It had to do a lot with this upper level low, that upper level low that is spinning over really Tennessee at this point, right over Memphis more or less. And there's a core of strong winds on the back side of that mid-level to upper level low. We call that a jet streak. That is coming down to the south and now kind of kicking to the southeast. You see that little color that's a little bit darker right there? That's a push to the southeast that is helping to lift up and push Helene to the east. And that's why the landfall is not here towards Apalachicola. That's why it's more towards Perry, because of that jet streak on the backside pushing it. If that were reversed, if we had this here blowing up like this, it would act more as a suction to kind of suck it up towards the upper level low. Instead of sucking towards that low, it's being pushed away. Kind of like, if you're a football fan, a kicker's foot coming down. There's the foot about to kick it and push it off. That's what's happening right now, kind of steering Helene just to the east of due north, and that is keeping it away from our area for sure, and with any luck, away from the highly populated capital city of Florida in Tallahasse. We have some pretty good rainfall here in the Wiregrass coming on through. Henry County up towards Eufaula and Barber County is raining pretty good. Much of Early County also looking at some pretty good rainfall in Seminole and Jackson counties. Houston County seeing some pretty good downpours come on through, especially from downtown eastward. We have that live camera at Southeast Health that we can show you, kind of watching some of that heavier rain move in here from the east. It's not going to make it too far to the east because of that drier air that's working in from the west, but there it is on the east side of Dothan. Very wet roadways. Not many people out and about today or this evening. You can see that rain moving in now from the east, so some heavier downpours moving into the city of Dothan for sure. There's a look at the radar down in the southeast. Notice all that fast movement around Tallahasse. Those are some of the stronger winds that are coming towards the north and the northwest. That rainfall intense here near, say, Ashford, up towards about Granbury Crossroads, southward to Mariana. Cottonwood seeing some very heavy rainfall. Pansy seeing some good rain as well. No threat of any tornadoes with this, thankfully, but the rain will pile onto an already wet ground. There's the center of Category 4 Hurricane Helene. Again, seeing that push just to the east of due north, and that puts landfall pretty close to Perry. So Scott Jankowski, our hurricane chaser, is out there. He had set up in Tallahasse, and we were talking back and forth about where the center of the storm would go, and I was kind of thinking Perry or just west of Perry, and it looks like that's going to be on the money. He set up right here, just northwest of Perry. Looks like he will get into the eye. That's his live shot showing up from Perry. The power went out about 15-20 minutes ago now. Is probably not coming back because this eyewall is moving ashore at this point. Really packing a punch. Some intense lightning out there as well. The worst of the weather will be east and southeast of us. So our winds, Ryan was showing you the winds, they're not bad here. Some of the higher gusts now are only in the 20s. So odds of any significant power outages here very, very low, but it is a certainty in this area. And if you've been to that area south of Tallahassee, you have a whole lot of pine tree forests in here, and those can come down as we saw after Hurricane Michael back in 2018, that area around Mariana and eastward. It was just either nothing or sticks basically snapped off. Just incredible to see the damage, and that will occur again. Michael was a Cat 5 at landfall, winds at about 160 miles per hour. This is a Cat 4, winds at 140 miles per hour. Again, not that much difference, honestly, when you look at the wind speeds, and that is going to very quickly move inland, carry up to I-10 and then into Georgia. And that's why the wind threat is so high across South Georgia. That area up towards Valdosta will see some significant wind damage. And there's a lot of big old trees in Valdosta as well if you've been there. So that area is going to see some significant damage as we go through the overnight. Power outages will be widespread as we go through tonight, even into tomorrow, over parts of North Georgia, maybe parts of South Carolina, maybe parts of North Carolina and Tennessee. We'll see some power outages from this storm. The eye is huge. It's about 40-45 miles in diameter. This is a very thick eye wall moving northward. It's losing some structure here on the west side, but some of these outer bands that form almost like a secondary eye wall, those can contain very strong winds also. So we're watching, just a lot unfold here. And the question is, how far east of Tallahassee will the eye go? Will it go far enough east to spare Tallahassee the western eye wall? That would be best case scenario, but the whole eye wall structure from the outside of the eye wall down to the outside of the bottom of the eye wall is probably 60 some miles. So it's huge, and west to east is even larger than that. As a matter of fact, let's just take the measuring tool out here and go from the outside of the eye wall, which is coming ashore, to the outside of the eye wall. You're at 70 miles. Inside to inside, because it's kind of stretched out, you're looking at probably 36 miles now inside diameter of the eye wall. That is very impressive from a Category 4 hurricane moving ashore here in the Big Bend of Florida. There's Scott's live shot. Scott Jankowski, hurricane chaser, right here, watching from northwest of Perry, about to get into the leading edge of that eye wall. The strongest winds are in this area. Again, looking at winds above on Doppler radar over 155 miles per hour. That is simply incredible. And there are multiple mesovortices rotating around the inside of that eye wall. Very common with powerful hurricanes to have these little mini spins. And that one mesovortice kind of kicked out here to the east, and it looks like it's going to help reform or wobble the center a little bit to the east. And that will likely put Perry into the eye of this hurricane, which is interesting in a way because Perry was not in the cone yesterday, the National Hurricane Center cone. So let me take a minute to address that, all right, because it's been a big topic of conversation, not just today, but yesterday especially, and even going back a couple days. The National Hurricane Center has access to some modeling and some techniques that I don't have access to as a meteorologist, that you don't have access to on your favorite weather site. So they've been relying heavily on some of that data that we can't see. The traditional data that maybe you look at weather models on the internet, and we certainly analyze weather models, the output. Those models were pretty consistent in showing landfall in this area. The models the Hurricane Center was using and the techniques had a track much farther to the west, and that was the cone that they put out, was using some of that data. This is a good follow. This is Alan Huffman, found this on X at Raleigh Weather. He was putting this together yesterday, and on the right, if you can take that away just for a minute, thank you, Kenneth. These are all different models that, as a meteorologist, I look at a lot, especially if there's some active weather coming our way. So these were the landfall spots of those models yesterday using the morning runs, 12Z is 7 a.m. Central Time. This was the National Hurricane Center track for the cone. Remember the cone went up to Dothan yesterday and went to about right here and went up. So the cone was basically in this area, and that was their center point. Meanwhile, the data that I look at as a meteorologist was all pointing towards Big Bend, maybe towards Perry. And my confidence in that was pretty high, but the Hurricane Center was to the west, which gives me reason to step back and say, hey, they're a big organization. They've been doing it a long time as well. You know, we have to watch for a western track. But a lot of the data was pointing towards the Big Bend. And that, I think, produced some confusion because that led to the National Weather Service putting out hurricane warnings all the way into southeast Alabama based on that track. But this is the track that's unfolding. So there's a lot of business that happens behind the scenes in the weather industry. And just like if you have an ailment and you go to the doctor and you go to 5 different doctors, you might get 5 different ideas of what's wrong with you. Take your car to a mechanic, 5 different mechanics might say something different about what's wrong with your vehicle. When you ask 5 meteorologists what's going to happen to a hurricane, you're going to have probably 5 different tracks because we all look and analyze the atmosphere a little bit differently in this case. So anyway, that's just a little peek inside what we've been going through in the weather industry over the past couple days in particular. But that's a good follow. Very interesting data there from Alan for sure. All right, back to what's happening now. We're looking at some pretty good rainfall coming on through southeast Alabama into southwest Georgia and the Florida Panhandle. One thing to point out here is the rain isn't moving farther westward in large part. I mean, it is to a certain extent, but it's not going to make it much farther than Dothan or maybe into Dale County and parts of Geneva County. It's not going to make it too far to the west at all because the atmosphere is really drying out to the west, and that drier air is going to be coming in from the west as we go through the overnight. So that moisture is coming in, kind of piling up here in southeast Alabama into the Panhandle, and then it will kind of lift out as we go through late this evening and the overnight. And it will occur pretty quickly because the forward motion of this storm is over 20 miles per hour. It is flying up towards the coast. So fringe effects here. Again, the track makes all the difference. If that center track were coming into southeast Alabama, it'd be a different story for us overnight, and we would have power outages galore. But given the fact the track will stay east of Tallahassee, the impacts here will be minimal, and that's best case scenario. And I guess kind of my gut feeling was it stays east of Tallahassee, and it is going to unfold that way. In fact, it's about to make landfall, at least starting to make landfall. The eyewall is ashore here now in Florida in the Big Bend, and there's really not much there. If I zoom in, there's just no big city to show you where it's moving ashore. So there's Horseshoe Beach, there's Cross City. It's off basically to the due west of Cross City. You go farther south here and you'll get to some of the areas you might know. There's Crystal River, there's Cedar Key right there. You certainly know those areas. They won't see the worst of the wind, but the storm surge through here, probably at least 12, maybe 15 feet, some significant surge. And if you know Cedar Key at all, there's not much there, and it's not very high above the Gulf of Mexico. So that area will be inundated. Now, a lot of the structures can handle that. They're kind of ready for that, but man, you're talking about a 15-foot storm surge in spots. Not much is built 18 feet in the high, 18 feet above ground that will survive a 20-foot storm surge if that does in fact materialize in this area, and it certainly might. As we zoom in here, some of the strongest winds are occurring in this band, which is between Highway 19 and the coast northwest of Cross City. Some intense winds in that band for sure, and that's one of those mesovortices that has spun up and kind of helped to reform the center, form a wobble, reform the center a little bit farther to the east. So there's one mesovortice right there, and you see about 4 others spinning around the center of circulation. Not much on the south side. Most of that rainfall is on the north side. So that eyewall shifting northward, that live view that you see is from our hurricane chaser, Scott Jankowski, in Perry, Florida. So if we zoom in here, there's Perry, and I'll kind of readjust the map just a little bit. He is set up right here, and he's in that area that's about to get hammered. Went through some pretty heavy rainfall there, a little bit lighter, as you can see looking at that picture for the moment, but the center of that storm is not too far away, and he's not too far away from the actual eyewall. He's about, 13 miles away. It's moving at about 25 miles per hour, so he's about a half hour or less away from getting into the thick of the eyewall. On that note, let's do a little track here of how far that eye has gone in the past hour. So that's the inside part of the eye wall. It's gone about 25 miles per hour. So the official movement is 24 miles per hour. That looks to be right on the money. 24 miles ago it was here, now it's here. That has taken 1 hour to go 24 miles. So you extrapolate that and it won't be too long. Again, about, half of 24 is 12, half of 60 minutes is 30. So he's about 30 minutes away from kind of being in the middle of that mess. That is Hurricane Helene. Category 4 Hurricane Helene making landfall. Very heavy rainfall here all the way through the Big Bend, and that is transitioning, I should say, northward. It looks like it will be safely east of Tallahassee. It looks like that cutoff for that eye wall is going to be awfully close to the city of Tallahassee. So we'll see if it does make it in. Again, there's going to be a big difference between being in that eye wall, that western eye wall, and not being in that western eye wall. And if you were living here in 2018, you know in the city of Dothan, there was a lot of tree damage. You go to Columbia and Gordon, it was a different story. It was much, much worse. And between Dothan and, say, Gordon, there's not that much distance, really. But because Gordon got into the western part of the eye wall, there was a whole lot more tree damage than what we saw in Dothan. And Dothan was bad, but not as bad as it was areas to the east. So we lost the radar there. And that was a concern of mine from, let's see, two standpoints. One, maybe because of the radar going down. Number two, maybe because of a data feed interruption, and it looks like maybe that has happened. I'm going to switch over to another graphic because hard to present weather information without any graphical information. So let's see if we can get this to load back up. And Ryan, I'm going to have you. Do you have radar on Max 1 at least?
Yeah, I think so. Oh no, wait, it actually just went out. It just went out.
All right, so I'm going to have you work on trying to get radar back.
Absolutely. And
we'll try to work with the other graphics that we have. And I showed you this before. When we look at the steering currents of the atmosphere, as a meteorologist, you look at the computer model output. That's important, of course, right? But part of the science part is not just like looking at a model and it's going to go here. You've got to understand the atmosphere and how the atmosphere works and what's at play in the atmosphere. So we've been watching this jet streak on the backside dropping southward to kind of help give that push. We always look for, what are the steering currents in the atmosphere, and that's the primary steering current that is helping us out this evening by pushing it a little bit farther to the east for sure. Kenneth, you told me something in my ear? All right, we're looking at a bridge. Cape Coral, okay, yeah. So that's a bridge from Cape Coral. Now, Cape Coral is way down the coast, all right? You've got Fort Myers, and then you've got Cape Coral right to the west of Fort Myers. Cape Coral is awesome if you've ever been there. It's a city with, I swear, 1 million canals. Almost every single house is on a canal, and there are boats and docks and pools and palm trees everywhere. But there are two main bridges that go from Fort Myers to Cape Coral, and maybe this is yeah, maybe is that maybe an old bridge that's now a fishing pier? If I remember correctly, I think that's what that might be. But there are multiple bridges in that general area. So that's a bridge there from Cape Coral, Florida, down the coast, way down the coast, down there again towards Fort Myers. So that area, the whole western side is seeing some significant storm surge. Even Fort Myers Beach, which is just south of Cape Coral, seeing some significant storm surge as well. That, of course, was the area of Fort Myers Beach that had 14 feet of surge 2 years ago when Hurricane Ian made landfall in Fort Myers Beach. Did just a number to that part of southwest Florida. Meanwhile, we're watching Category 4 Hurricane Helene make landfall. These are the storms and the names that we'll remember, that all of us will remember for a long time. Michael, of course, stands out. You go back, Ivan in 2004, Rita and Katrina in 05. I mean, there have been a million. You go back even further in history. But this is one that will stand out. You know, Charlie is a big one in Florida. Jean came on through Florida. Francis came on through Florida. Irma came through Florida. Helene, now another one of those storms that will be a significant memory maker for a lot of people and a lot of issues as that storm moves northward and then eventually back to the north and to the northwest as we go through time. A lot of dry air is to the west of us, and that will kind of move in as we go through tonight and tomorrow. And that dry air, along with that upper level low and that jet streak on the backside, helping to push Helene just far enough to the east to keep us relatively safe for the overnight, and then carrying that system northward. They will kind of interact a little bit, that upper level low here and the spin from the hurricane, the Fujiwara effect, where low pressures kind of pinwheel and spin around each other. It looks like, depending on the modeling you look at, I mean, the interaction will be interesting to see, because you've got actually probably two little spins here, and then this will be a spin. So you may have basically three little spins around one main spin in the atmosphere. And the atmosphere is like a fluid, and it's very easy to get little spins to occur in the atmosphere. Very much like if you put a bunch of soapy water in a bathtub and swirled your hand, you're gonna have all these little swirls occur. Kind of the same thing happens in the atmosphere every single day. We're trying to figure out where those little swirls go, and it's not always easy, but we have a pretty good firm handle on what is happening here as we have the approach of Helene to the coast. All right, we've got Doppler radar back, Ryan, I see it. So what do you have there?
Yeah, so we got radar back. I think that was a little bit of a data interruption. Just going back to our area, kind of seeing that divide of rainfall where we're still getting some pretty decent showers from Helene coming into the areas such as like Houston County, Henry County, Jackson County, Florida, as well as our Georgia counties there. Then it starts to really kind of end towards parts of Coffee County and Geneva, Covington, only seeing really some sprinkles. And so we can already see with where the eye of Helene is, we're seeing that divide in the rain. But of course, this is what we've been watching very closely now, kind of going back. We can already see the eye starting to finally make landfall. As we kind of zoom in here too, like David was saying, again, really Perry is what we've been kind of using as a reference for the path of this eye wall, which was just slightly outside of the cone that the National Hurricane Center has been putting out today as well. So again, the dynamics of the storm has been very interesting, turning ever so slightly to the east throughout the day. And so Perry is really where we're going to be seeing more of that activity, as this now makes landfall as a Category 4 hurricane, a very powerful hurricane. Especially, we were treating this with the same importance and the same. The word I'm looking for, I'm losing it, but we were watching this very closely with the same attitude as Hurricane Michael back in 2018, especially as for the past few days, there was a lot of uncertainty with where this storm was going to go. If that eye wall was just a little bit farther to the west, say like 30 miles, the impacts for our area would have been a lot worse. We could have seen damage similar to Hurricane Michael back in 2018. And so now we're seeing that the eye wall is making its way very close and will really make its way very close towards Tallahasse right there. I'll kind of draw a line similar how David did earlier, where we can see the edge of this eye wall just likely going to barely skim past Tallahasse, but that is still very close to the city. So not to say that Tallahasse is out of the danger, but they'll still see some really gusty winds. But it would be a lot worse if they were within this eye wall or even in the center, but they'll likely still see some big impacts. And not to say that other areas like Perry and maybe even Madison, just a little bit up north there, can see some very powerful winds, a lot of damaging stuff. I'll go ahead and erase that line and switch to our base velocity. You kind of see what the winds are doing here, and really noticeable just to see that the wind field is so much different than what we usually see for severe weather when we're tracking it. Usually when we're tracking thunderstorms with gusty winds, usually we can see colors around really bright green into blue, similar to like similar to this color right here, or we're tracking colors kind of pink. And again, the difference between these blue and pinks, the blue is winds going into or coming at the radar site, while for the reds, that's what's going away from the radar site. But that's typically what we usually try to track for severe weather. But now you're getting these really dark blues, even purples here like this, a little bit closer towards Mayo, along still in or out in the water just south of the Big Bend. We're seeing colors around orange there, and we can kind of pinpoint what those winds are here, especially as they get closer to the radar site. This is a lot closer to the radar beam, and so that means it's a lot closer towards the surface, I should say, of where that radar beam is tracking. So we're seeing winds at 89 miles per hour, 81, 82, even a little bit stronger, 95, 113 closer to that eye. We can even see 115 where the purples are, just south of Perry. That's, again, where that eye is really getting close to. And so you got very intense winds right here associated with this storm. Again, really why it's a Category 4 storm, meaning that it's been holding on to max sustained winds around 140 miles per hour for the past few hours. It hasn't really let up in its strength at all either. So this storm, we knew it was going to be packing a punch as it made its way into the Florida coastline. And let's kind of let the base velocity kind of show really like where the center of it is right there. We can kind of see where those two colors are meeting up. That's really where you're going to be seeing the center of that storm. And so you're going to be really seeing the most powerful winds right there in the center of the vortex. And as it continues to make its way farther to the northwest, definitely want to be staying aware of this storm as it makes its way inland, because like we just saw with the base velocity, this is definitely packing a storm. This is actually a live view from hurricane chaser Scott Jankowski. We've been really watching his live stream for the past couple of hours as well, and even just about probably 45 minutes ago, the power went out. That's why we're not seeing a lot there for the street lights, and actually we possibly even saw some transformers blown out by the winds coming in. But still, we can see through the street. Oh wait, that may have been a lightning strike right there as well. But where the headlights are shining, we can see just how much of that rain is flying past, and you can really see it through the pavement as well. The rain just really flying across, kind of making its way sideways. When you have 100 mile per hour winds like this, the rain is really just going to fly along with it. And earlier with the street lights on, we could even see that, or you may be able to see it with the headlights on right there. Rain easily able to kind of be carried off the roofs of those cars parked right there. So we've been watching Scott's footage very closely for the past hour, really just getting a really good view from the surface of how powerful this storm is. I
want to share some information here, Ryan, real quick. We've been checking some of the buoy observations across the west coast of the Florida Peninsula. So the Hurricane Center here predicting up to 12 feet or more of storm surge in the Big Bend area into, say, the Steinhatchee area and Cedar Key. Cedar Key is running about 8 feet above where they should be. So about 8 feet of storm surge at this point in Cedar Key. Looking southward towards Cape Coral, Fort Myers area, about 5.5 feet of storm surge in that part of Florida at this point. So there's a lot of water being pushed there into the coast of Florida, not just up here where we have the center of the storm, but also pretty far to the south as well. I want to also touch on rainfall amounts in the area. I've updated some of these numbers here, and these are general amounts over the past 24 hours. You've got 6+ inches here, parts of Holmes County, Jackson County as well, into Geneva County, 3, 4, 5 inches in pockets in Houston County, a couple inches back to the west, 1.5 inches or so, 2, 3 inches up here over parts of Henry County, and as you go farther to the east, about 4 or 5 inches over parts of, say, Miller County and Early County. Those totals will go up as deeper moisture comes in from Hurricane Hurricane Helene. So watching that very closely. That'll be the biggest impacts, honestly, when it's all said and done, will be the rain totals in our area. The winds are not that bad, will not be that bad overnight, and that is certainly some good news. There's the center of Helene, a very well-defined eye, and boy, what do you know? It's going to come ashore at Perry, Florida. It is. The center is going to be about right here as it makes landfall. Shout out to our graph model for really nailing that. That's going to end up being outside of the cone, outside of the National Hurricane Center cone, even the cone from the 4 o'clock update. I think that cone cut off somewhere like right in here. So it's been hugging the east side of that forecast cone, and it's being driven a little east of due north by that upper level energy kind of pushing here off to the east. So some good news for us. Bad news though for that part of Florida. Appalachia Bay here is really going to take a lot of water and see a lot of wind damage as well. So the question is, how much of that western eye wall will work into Tallahassee? Again, the winds here are a lot stronger than the winds right here. And on Max 2, Ryan, pop up the winds. So let's go back and forth between what we're seeing on radar and what we're seeing with the wind. So let me check that out. There's some bright pink. You go from pink to this brownish color back to pink. So 132 mile per hour outbound winds. That's impressive. So away from the radar site. The core of those inbound winds are right here. Now the problem is the color table isn't on this set, isn't going up high enough to capture it, but what we've seen on other platforms is the wind topping 150 miles per hour right in that eye wall. So you've got 132 outbound, you've got 156.8 we saw inbound. That's incredible. Right here is where we have our storm chaser, Scott Jankowski, and those are some lightning flashes occurring as the center of the storm is approaching. Let's go back to the traditional radar view and show you how big that eye wall. Let's measure that, Ryan. Inside to inside of that eye wall. That is probably still, what, 29, 30 miles inside to inside of that very concentric looking eye wall structure. You look at it from basically go from here, go from the main eye wall to the outside of the main eye wall. You're probably what, 60, 62? That's incredible. So that's, I mean, that's huge. That, you know, you translate that northward, and Tallahassee will be very close to the western part of that western eye wall. And I think when we're all said and done, we're going to see a tremendous difference in wind damage between the east side and the west side of Tallahassee. The west side not so bad, the east side a lot worse, and certainly worse along I-10 there. I'd be surprised if I-10 is open tomorrow. If you, and think about that, if you have travel plans to go to Orlando tomorrow, to Jacksonville for the weekend, to go see family in Tampa, you want to go somewhere along the southeast coast of Florida, I mean, forget about it tomorrow. I just don't see I-10 being open. There are too many trees. I mean, there's so many trees that just cover that interstate. The median is a lot of trees. It's not just like open grass. It's, I mean, it's tree area all the way through there. So might take a while. I mean, heck, it took a long time after Michael, after Idalia, to clean up I-10. I'm sure it's going to take a while to clean up after Helene, and it's going to move up there to I-10 and produce a lot of damage. So there's Scott in Perry. Let's zoom into Perry, and that's where that live picture is. And boy, he's about to take the brunt of this storm. He is set up here on the northwest side of Perry, generally in this area right here at a rest area, and those winds are still coming in here from generally the east to east southeast, and he's about to get into the thick of a Category 4 hurricane. Now that's his goal. It's not like he accidentally ended up in Perry, Florida. We were conversing, trying to figure out the best place for him to go to send us some live pictures, and he ended up in Perry. I've been trying to text him to see if we can't get him on live. At this moment, he has not texted me back yet. So, but he's sitting in this vehicle. He's got a good internet connection, and he's getting into the eye here of Hurricane Helene, and there's some really intense rain just down to the south. So we'll see continued deterioration of his picture. Now, if you were tuned in earlier when we started this a little after 8, there were streetlights on at this rest area. The streetlights are gone, and they're not coming back on until who knows. I mean, they're warning that some areas here could be without power for 2, 3, 4 weeks because of the amount of tree damage that will occur overnight, and just cutting away the trees to get to people and places and poles and whatnot will take several days just to get there, not even to actually install new equipment and transformers and poles and everything that goes into recovery after a huge hurricane like this. But he's in Perry. We're watching those live pictures come in. Let's go a little bit bigger, Ryan, show how big this eye is. Once again, the center of circulation about to move inland here. We call this the Big Bend of Florida, and it is going to move in to the Perry area. Steinhatchee is about right here, and they're going to be on the fringe of it, but it looks like Perry gets right, especially here, just northwest of Perry, is going to be right in the center of the eye of that Category 4 hurricane. And we'll hear from Scott, whether it's tonight or sometime in the days ahead. We'll hear from him. Boy, that's incredible. I'm going to do something here because I want to go back and I want to have the lightning pop up, and I think if I click here, there. So there's the lightning. I'm trying to see if we have any of those lightning strikes showing up. We don't, which makes me think maybe some of those are not lightning strikes. Maybe they are transformers, the bright flashes, because usually we'll get the lightning strikes to show up, and those could be, if you've ever seen a transformer blow at night, in a dark sky, it can really, send out light for quite a ways, and that could be what we're seeing there. But there could be some lightning strikes as well because he is getting into the eye wall. He's right here. Without the street lights, it's harder to see the intensity of the rain. We've got the headlights on, so you can make it out a little bit. Does that stream? Yeah, it's kind of cutting out maybe a little bit. You can see the windshield wipers getting stuck there. So
yeah, David, I also wanted to jump in real quick and let you know that where Scott Jankowski actually is for the power outage. Those have gone up in the thousands in just the past hour. So that's another thing that's really been building with the landfall of this.
There's so many trees there, and that's going to be something to watch as we see the storm push inland too, because the entire Florida Panhandle will be just hammered. So the internet connection is cutting in and out. I think he's on Starlink. He should be on Starlink at this point. So that's about as good as it gets. Now Starlink's the Elon Musk internet satellite company, which is really cool. It's a game changer. But the problem is you're trying to send a signal from Perry, Florida up to a satellite, and it's got to cut through all that rain. And that's the difficulty in communications at this point of a hurricane chase. When you're in the middle of the eye wall, it is very difficult for that satellite signal to shoot through all that rain and the clouds to get out to space to connect to that satellite to communicate. It's coming in and out. Now he's recording this data, so we'll have, I guess, that. And he's recording the actual pressure drop that is occurring. That pressure was, last I saw, 938.8 millibars. See if the Hurricane Center has put out, or the hurricane hunters have anything newer, but that's certainly a chance. 938 is significant. Michael, I think it was around 920 is what Michael was when it made landfall. I think in that ballpark. But this is Category 4. Hurricane Helene, maximum sustained winds at 140 miles per hour, making landfall in the Big Bend of Florida. A huge storm. There's Perry, Florida. It's amazing. It's just, you don't see this very often. And when you do, it's just kind of like, wow, that's a Cat 4 hurricane making landfall not too far away from us, not impacting us in a bad way. Some rain, a little breezy here at home, but it's not that bad. Tallahasse getting into some of those really heavy rain bands. I don't know, Kenneth, if you can find anything live. Kenneth is my director. Him and I go way back directing and working shows together. He's been trying to find some live shots from Tallahasse, but power outages will be a big issue. So some of the cameras that were up will not be up as we go through time. Right behind this shot is Perry, Florida, where that picture is coming in from, and Scott in Perry is going through the eye wall at this point. Appalachia Bay here seeing some intense rainfall. St. Mark's seeing some intense rain as well. There's some good news. If you have any property in parts of Florida that are to the west, you're doing okay. I was looking at some of the water rises here. Apalachicola is only up just a little bit. It wasn't much of anything significant to worry about, and that's some good news. There's an offshore flow at East Point there, so Carabel, an offshore flow. You look at East Point, you look at Apalachicola, the wind is blowing offshore, and that's a good thing. Keeps the bulk of the water away. Most of that water rise will be from this area off to the east and to the southeast. But the center of this storm, wouldn't you know it, is going to end up being right in Perry, Florida, which you go back again. I'm going to show you this graphic again. Looking at the modeling yesterday, this is from Wednesday morning, the 7 a.m. Wednesday hurricane models and other models that came out, the global models that we use to forecast the weather day in and day out. Those models were all clustered right there in the Big Bend, right towards Perry. I mean, if you were to look at this and say, those are the dots, where would you pick the landfall spot to be? Most of you would say, probably right there. That was the National Hurricane Center track on that cone. So that, I think, caused some confusion yesterday, and I hope it did not make some people in this area think, oh, I'm okay, I'm not going to worry about it so much, because this is a big storm. It's affecting a lot of people, and a lot of people east and southeast of us being hit in a big way. But it's been hugging that eastern part of the cone and beyond here for the past couple days. Dothan looking okay. Yeah, there's some rain coming on through. Not that kind of rainfall that we're seeing in Perry, Florida with the eyewall. This rain is more or less moderate, not real intense. It is working to the west, but again, kind of lining up right along 431 southward to 231. It's not going too much farther to the west, and it will kind of stall somewhere in this area over the next hour or so, and then begin to kind of pull away and lift up as the center of Helene continues to work northward through the Panhandle or the Florida area north of the Big Bend and then into Georgia. So good rainfall here, Henry County into Houston County, Jackson County as well. There's a look at Hurricane Helene making landfall. Have you found any pressure updates at all, Ryan, by chance?
Last updates that I've been able to find came in at 7. So okay. Right now I'd say 938 is likely our best indication of the pressure. But nonetheless, it has been very impressive to see the pressure falls that Helene has taken throughout the day. And actually, one of the models that we were watching for, initially forecasting for Helene, it's one of the hurricane models that we like to track, and it was taking pressure down to the 930s earlier in the week. So that's why, while we've been watching this system, we knew that for the cap of the strength that it could have been up to a Category 5 hurricane. And so we knew that this was going to be packing a lot of energy. So as the day wore on, we were not surprised to see that it was able to reach Category 4 strength, especially with that pressure.
And on that note, Ryan, you look at the hurricane models. Did you happen to see the HAFS A and the HAFS B earlier in the week?
Yes, earlier in the week.
Did you see the crazy 888 pressure that was being cranked out?
Yes, so, we actually did talk about that as well. It was around 888 as well. So that was just another, just another indication. We were even talking about it being a Cat 6.
Don't always believe the model data, though.
Right, you can't always believe in it, but it was a good indication just how powerful this storm was going to be. So, yeah, really good indication right there, David.
Yeah, that was just impressive. When you see that kind of model data, you start realizing, wow, that could really be a huge storm. You know, to get to Cat 4 status is rare. I mean, it doesn't happen very often. To get to Cat 5 status is extremely rare, especially in the Gulf of Mexico. Really doesn't happen too often. So what we're seeing here is very, very impressive, and it's coming ashore. There's Perry, Florida, right here. Scott is right here. We have lost his shot. We have lost the shot of Scott, unfortunately, but it's understandable. All right, this is a storm with maximum sustained winds of 140 miles per hour, and he's in the middle of that eyewall. That eyewall contains the strongest winds. Maybe not 140 where he is, but probably gusting well over 100 miles per hour. So that satellite shot has gone away for now. It might come back. One thing to look at here, and you can almost tell by the stretching out again of the southern part of the eyewall, there's more and more of a push in the atmosphere from west to east. All right, it's a function of that mid-level jet streak, the steering currents impacting the system, and it's a function of some drier air south and southwest of the circulation getting wrapped into the circulation, causing kind of a top-heavy storm once again. But those factors combined are resulting in this shift eastward with landfall, and that will put Scott right here in the eye of the hurricane. Perry, Florida right there will be in the eye of Hurricane Helene, and that area here will start to see the winds come down a little bit. In fact, it's happening right now just to the south and to the southwest of Perry. Tallahasse on the fringe of the western eye wall. The eye will pass certainly pretty far away from Tallahasse. Is it Monticello, I believe, is the city there along I-10 off to the east of Tallahasse, where it may come ashore or cross I-10, somewhere in that vicinity. But it looks like nearest to the coast will be Perry right here, and Steinhatchee not too far away from the eye wall at this point, so seeing some very strong winds there, but certainly looking at landfall pretty close to Perry, Florida. Alligator Point, there's Perry. We were mentioning those cities a lot in our analysis when I was posting to Facebook in particular this week, and on WTVY.com, pinpointing that area for landfall. It looks like it ends up on the east side of that area, pretty close to Perry. In fact, just to the southwest of Perry is where landfall will occur. We're at 9:48 now. Landfall will likely be pretty close to 10 o'clock, and the models were kind of pinpointing 10 o'clock. So Scott, is he back? Briefly, in and out. So just with that shot, if you can, Kenneth, punch that full screen just so people can see what it looks like. A little glimpse right there into the eye. I know it's a crummy shot. You can't make out much, but you can see that the power is out, and the headlights were shining, and I mean, there's some rain coming on through for sure, but that satellite signal is coming in and out. We don't have the lights to really illuminate all the rain that is occurring, so it's kind of hard to see. If you go outside and it's pitch black, you're not going to be able to see the raindrops, but if it was lit up like you watch a football game and the lights and the rain, and it just looks amazing, it would look that way if we had light outside. But the street lights are gone from that rest area where he is right here. It's no wonder, because he's in the thick of the eye wall of a Category 4 hurricane, making a bit of a turn here to the northeast, again indicative of that drier air and the push in the atmosphere off to the east, and that will protect, well, certainly protecting the wiregrass, that will protect in some part Tallahasse, because if Tallahasse were hit by this, it would be a different story compared to what they will see. It's going to be bad in Tallahasse, especially with all the trees. It will be bad, but it won't be as bad as it will be, say, areas towards Dowling Park and towards Perry, Florida. There's not going to be much left of Perry, I'm afraid, as far as trees go anyway, as we get through this storm, because these winds are gusting over 100 miles per hour, and even a well-built structure, even with the better building codes that have been implemented over the years, you know, 115, 125 mile per hour wind gusts, that will do a lot of damage, even to a well-built structure, and those are going to take a beating. So number one, we hope Scott's okay and his crew going through the storm. Personally, I would not want to be out in the eye wall of a Category 4 hurricane. Some people don't mind it. There are hurricane chasers, I'm sure, up and down the coast trying to get into the eye of this system, and I would just not be one of them. But there's Scott's live shot. See, that looks like a transformer. That looks like a transformer. Or you know what it is probably? It's probably a power line that's sparking, a hot power line that keeps touching the ground and keeps sparking out. That's probably what that is. That was impressive to see. Wow. A lot of rainfall coming on through, a lot of wind as well. So the fact that we've got the technology to get this live shot from the eye wall of a Cat 4 is very, very impressive. That is very, very impressive. But that's a bad storm. I mean, I'm telling you, there's going to be power outages galore, impacting so many people. If there's any good news, the temperatures over the next several days will be in the 80s for highs. This isn't a storm in August or early September where it's in the 90s every day in the aftermath. At least it will be less humid and drier and a little more comfortable for those who don't have power for the next several days or the next few weeks. But there's going to be a lot of damage all the way through Florida into Georgia as this system comes ashore. But yeah, very, very interesting to watch the evolution of this eye wall and the stretching of it. And I go back to the accordion analogy. We kind of saw that with the rain, but we're kind of seeing that with the eye as well, where it stretches and then it comes back together, and it stretches and comes back together, but it's moving. So it's stretching, comes back together, stretches, comes back together, and that general track then is basically north-northeast. Certainly east of due north and maybe even northeast here, given this push that is occurring, which is in my mind so impressive because the graph model was right on the money. And I go back to 24 hours ago when that graph model that we use every single day here on News 4, that graph model was showing landfall right here. And I was hesitant to use it, and I ended up using a different model because the Hurricane Center cone was so far to the west, and I just didn't want to, show that, but it ends up being right on the money. But that was the hunch all along, that we would see that track there east of Tallahassee, and it just, from a forecasting perspective, it's really amazing to see that unfold. And in a way, it's encouraging for all of us because we've gotten to the point with some of these models that we can trust them. We should trust them because when you see repeated performance that is outstanding, that gives a belief that the next system will be forecasted the same way. So anyway, we're watching the center of Hurricane Helene bear down on Perry, Florida. There's Tallahassee, there's Cross City, and there's a live shot coming in from Perry, Florida. It's amazing that we still have this shot coming in, a little bit of a power bump here at the station. But yeah, we're watching this moisture come on through the wiregrass, and I'm not sure. Ryan, take a peek outside. Did we lose power in the city by chance?
I'll go check that.
Yeah, just take a peek out there. But there's a live shot from Perry, Florida that's coming and going. Maybe that's our cue that, hey, we've got a newscast coming up at 10 o'clock and we'll have to stop this live stream and go do the newscast, and then we'll probably come back and do some coverage after that newscast. Look here at winds, though. Let's go back to that. That was kind of a good view on Max 1 of the winds, and these are wind gusts, 30 miles per hour now, Andalusia, 36 in Crestview. The winds aren't even gusting outside in Dothan, so I don't think the winds are much of an issue at this point. But there's a little band of stronger winds to the west that will be moving eastward, and then through the area, again, winds may gust to about 30, 35 miles per hour in pockets. Okay, let's go back to Max 2. Real quick, and we're going to wrap this up and get ready for our 10 p.m. newscast. But there's a look at Hurricane Helene making landfall. There's the Big Bend. It's kind of on the eastern side of the Big Bend, and Perry, Florida is about to get into the eye. Again, our hurricane chaser, Scott, is right here on the northwest side of Perry. He's got a live shot up for us. It's got a Starlink internet connection, so it's coming and going. That shot is coming and going. The fact that we've seen anything from inside this eye wall is very, very impressive, if you ask me. And he's about to be in the eye of the hurricane. So with him being in the eye, the signals should be better. I'm guessing that eye has cleared out pretty well because it's large and there's nothing showing up as far as returns in the center of that hurricane. So very impressive. Okay, we're going to wrap up the stream, or at least wrap up our coverage. I don't know if we'll keep streaming. We stream the news too, so we're going to have the newscast coming up here at 10, and then Ryan and I will hop back on after the show and keep covering Category 4 Hurricane Helene moving into the Big Bend of Florida.
This has been a forewarned weather alert.